"Help! Someone's outside my tent." Jake's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried enough urgency to jolt Matt awake. He sat up, blinking in confusion. "What?" Matt muttered groggily. Jake didn't answer right away. He was frozen, his hand clenched around his flashlight, his breathing shallow. The night outside their tent was eerily silent. Too silent. The usual rustling of leaves or chirping of crickets was gone. And then they both heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps crunching on the forest floor. They weren't loud, but they were close, circling their tent. Someone, or something, was out there. Matt's stomach twisted. "Maybe it's an animal," he whispered. Jake shook his head. He knew better. These weren't random steps. They were slow, measured, stalking. Then came the worst part. The zipper of their tent started to move. At that moment, pure terror took over. Jake grabbed his phone, its dim screen casting a faint glow inside the tent. He fumbled to turn on the flashlight, aiming it directly at the zipper. For a split second, it stopped. Whoever or whatever was outside had hesitated. Then suddenly, the zipper yanked down halfway. Jake screamed. Matt lunged forward, smacking the fabric of the tent where the hand should be, and whatever was out there let out a deep, guttural sound, something between a growl and a gasp. It bolted away, heavy footsteps disappearing into the woods. Silence. Jake's hands were shaking as he reached for his pocket knife. "We can't stay here," he hissed. Matt nodded, his face pale. They weren't experienced campers. They'd come here for a fun weekend, not expecting this. For the next hour, they sat huddled in the center of the tent, gripping their knives and flashlights, jumping at every distant rustle. Then, snap. A twig broke just beyond the tree line, then another and another. Someone was back. Jake's phone was dying, but he managed to pull up the time. 3:47 a.m., still hours before dawn. The sounds moved closer. Not just footsteps now. Breathing. Deep, ragged, almost wheezing. Then a whisper, right outside the tent. "I see you." Matt's breath hitched in his throat. Jake turned his flashlight toward the voice, but he saw nothing. Just the thin layer of tent fabric separating them from the outside world. They had to get out of there. Matt reached for the car keys. The only way they were making it out alive was if they ran. Fast. "On 3, Jake whispered. 1, 2, 3. They unzipped the tent in a flash and bolted. Barefoot, crashing through the underbrush, tripping over roots, not daring to look back. The car was only 100 yards away, but in the pitch-black forest, it felt like miles. And behind them, footsteps, chasing. Matt fumbled with the keys, his hands slick with sweat. He clicked the unlock button. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. A branch snapped, right behind them. Then headlights flooded the area. Finally, the car unlocked. They scrambled inside, slamming the doors shut. Jake turned the key so hard he thought he'd break it, but the engine roared to life, and then they saw it, standing just beyond the tree line. A tall figure, barely illuminated by the headlights. Not an animal, not a person. Its limbs were too long, its face obscured by tangled, matted hair, and its eyes. They were glowing. For a split second, it just stood there, watching. Then it smiled. Jake floored the gas, and they sped down the dirt road, not daring to look back. They didn't stop until they were miles away, parked at a gas station, hands still shaking, breath coming in ragged gasps. They never went camping again, but sometimes, when Jake is alone at night, he swears he still hears it, that deep, ragged breathing just outside his window.